Whew, it is colder than frig out. That looks kind of cool, eh? The background with the stores behind me. It's kind of Vegas-y. No unboxing tonight. I figured it would be the short crazy story night. We'll go for a cruise. I'll tell that story about how I crossed paths with a guy that was on Unsolved Mysteries, a serial killer. Don't mind me, guys. You know we gotta go for some jug up to tell this story. We're gonna hit Walmart and get some jug up for tonight and just relax. I was gonna go to the reserve tonight, but I'm gonna go tomorrow in the daytime. That way I could just lay around and eat junk food tonight and relax. And yeah, we'll go get the junk and then it's story time. I'm on vacation, so I'm not here when the store opens to toy hunt. I was supposed to be on mornings this week, but I'm not because I'm on holidays. But I just ran into the Phantom, my mechanic buddy, and he hid me something. I like the little Puma. No better way to tell a story like this than sitting in a dark parking lot. Well, it's lit up behind me, but whatever, you guys get it. This is actually a crazy story. And in order to get into this, we have to go all the way back to my childhood in Sault Ste. Marie. All the way back here. In the mid-90s, I would say. Early to mid-90s. That's where we're going to go. Now, down the highway, just a little bit from my hometown of Sault Ste. Marie, is a small town called Blind River. Population 3,472 as of 2016. The year is 1991. I'm going to be turning 13 that December. It's, I believe, June of 1991. And there's an elderly couple that are staying at a rest area just outside of Blind River. The McAllisters, I believe their name was. They were elderly. They were in an RV, a motorhome, and they were staying at a rest stop. And it was a quiet rest stop. And all these years later, that rest stop still looks the same, and it's kind of spooky, but it's kind of quiet. Okay, and they were the only ones at the rest stop. And they were going to spend the night. They were traveling through whatever. They were pulled over, going to spend the night at the rest stop. We're going to cruise because this story takes a bit. So I'm going to be 13 the year this all takes place. The elderly couple, the McAllisters, are staying in an RV just outside of Blind River, Ontario, just down the highway from my hometown in Sault Ste. Marie. I'm a preteen at the time. And I remember hearing about all this, and it was scary. So, all of a sudden, this elderly couple get a knock at the door. It's the middle of the night. And it's a man saying, "Police, open up." And they open up the door, and it's a man with a shotgun, and he wants to rob them. And I'm going to post a bunch of links about this story. It's on the Unsolved Mysteries website even still. This guy's still alive. I Googled him today. He was just denied parole a couple years ago. I wonder why. But when this happened, he wasn't that old and I was a little boy. He's an old man now and I'm a grown man. But so anyway, he ends up, a car pulls in and intervenes. A man named Brian Major, who was young, like 20, 25, something like that. He sees what's going on and tries to take off. And the man, who identified himself as a police officer, shot all three of them. Shot the guy in the car that pulled in to try to help, shot the wife, and shot the husband. The husband rolled underneath the RV. And the robber, thinking that they were all dead, climbs into a Chevy van, like a Vandura, kind of like the A-Team van, but it was a dark blue color. And they're gone. And years elapse. And nobody knows anything. And I remember there was real fear because nobody knew anything about it. It was just totally random and unmotivated, okay? So they put out a composite sketch because the old man survived. And the composite sketch, this is a funny twist on the story. The composite sketch, when I was a teenager, so this is a few years later, I'm selling a little bit of dope at the time, oil, actually. And I was 16, 17 years old, something. And one of the dealers in town, a guy named Ron Massey, way back then, was selling a lot of oil, and he was a lot older than me. And he looked identical to the composite sketch. His first name was even Ron. He had the crunched in nose, he had the long scraggly hair. The police had him under surveillance for a year, following him everywhere, gave him polygraph tests, everything, and it wasn't him. And he was pissed because you can't sell drugs if the cops are following you everywhere, and he was innocent of it. So anyway, they put out this composite sketch, and it's a total cold case for years and years and years, okay? And then DNA is introduced. Okay, so in 1999, now you guys know this, the ones that follow my channel regularly, I'm an ex-criminal. I used to be a career criminal when I was younger. My last arrest was in April of 1999, so I haven't been arrested in 25 years. Okay, it'll be the 25th anniversary of my last arrest this April, okay? So I'm a reformed criminal. But in 1999, I was sitting in the Sault Ste. Marie jail on McNabb Street, the old jail, the one that people were hanged in back in the day. And it's funny because I remember that jail was so old, decrepit, and filthy. I remember telling my father, wow, I can't believe it's legal for them to keep us in here like this. And my dad going, what do you think? It's jail. But 2 years later, they closed the building down because it was in inhumane condition. And of course, it was after I went through there, you know what I mean? But anyway, I'm in the Sault Ste. Marie jail. And all of a sudden, I'm hearing all the inmates talk about this high-profile inmate that's going to be coming in. And it was a man that was an ex-police officer that he got arrested because of DNA, like back in the late 90s. In fact, I was in jail with the first man in Northern Ontario to get arrested for DNA. He's passed away now, a guy named Rick. I'm not going to say his last name. But he got arrested for a break and enter. He cut himself on glass, left blood there. Next thing you know, the police came to his house with a warrant for blood. He gave his blood. It took a couple months back then, but they came back and they arrested him, and he was in jail with me at that time for over DNA for a break and enter. So anyway, this guy got arrested. His name was Ronald Glenn West. And he was arrested not for the Blind River homicides at the time. He was arrested lived in Toronto in 1970, and he was a police officer. And he murdered a nurse, and he murdered another woman. I believe it involved breaking into their house, tying them up, robbing them, and killing them. Like something like the same MO. Okay, so they caught him for DNA for these two cold cases from 1970. This was a big deal. It was all over the media, everything, right? And then they tied him in to the Blind River homicide case. So I'm in jail with this guy. Now, I'm not in there with him, okay? Because if you remember, I'm in general population because I'm not a rapist, I'm not a rat, I'm not anything like that. So I'm in population. This guy's an ex-police officer with rape and killing women. So they're not going to put him in with me or any of the other guys. So the first time I seen him was at court. I was at court, and it was that courthouse is still the same back there, although they updated the security because people kept escaping. And they actually have metal detectors at the doors now, but back then they didn't. Okay, like, I'm talking about the days where they were using ink to take my fingerprints. My last arrest is when they had the computerized fingerprints and all that, but this is way back, okay? So, that courthouse, they had one big bullpen. Not one big bullpen. They had a big room with 3 or 4 different bullpens in it. Bullpens are holding cells that they put inmates in to hold them till they have to go in for their court case. So I was there one day, and there was a man in the cell across from me and another guy. They brought him in and purposely put him away from me and this other guy. And right away, me and the other guy looked at each other and said, that's got to be a sex offender or a protective custody if they're putting him in there. And our job is to bug him and just make his life hell. So I started asking him who he was. And he's sitting there ignoring me like I'm not even there. Like, he's just looking ahead. He's across the room in another cell. And I'm saying, I know you could hear me, blah, 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 blah. And then the guy that I'm in the cell with somehow had a newspaper, probably from one of the guards, because you got to remember, it's the 90s, it's a small town, right? And he points at a picture in the paper, and it says cold case, blah, 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 and it was a big headline about this arrest. And it was the man in the cell across from us, Ronald Glenn West. And I was like, wow, that guy is arrested for the 2 nurses, and they're pretty sure he did the Blind River double homicide. For a small town like Sault Ste. Marie in the late 90s, to have a guy like that from a cold case, 2 murders from Toronto from 1970, and to finally have the guy that killed the old lady and killed the other guy and almost killed the old man all these years later, it was a big deal. And it really sticks out in my head because that guy caused a lot of fear in the community when I was a kid. Like, that was on Unsolved Mysteries. It was all over the media, guys. I think they even profiled him on America's Most Wanted. Like, he was a cop when he was killing people in Toronto. Here's the actual police composite sketch, and it was everywhere, guys, of the suspect before they made the arrest. And that's also the same photograph that put all the heat on that Ron dude that was an oil kingpin back there in the 90s. So he was in the same building as me. Now, I could lie and spice it up and say, oh, I seen him in the mess hall and I hit him in the head with a friggin' plate, or no. I seen him across from me in a holding cell and was trying to get him going, call him names. We even tried to get them to put him over with us, trying to convince them to do that, but the guards were not stupid. And another time I was going down for a visit, and protective custody had visits at different times than general population. General pop used to be between 2 and 4. And that's how I used to find out if guys were in PC. If I was on the street and there was a guy in jail and there was a word that he was in PC, I just used to call the jail, see what time his visits were. There you go. But there was 2 other times I did see him. The one time was me going down for a visit, and he was being led down the hall another way by guards, going either to see a doctor or maybe coming back from seeing his lawyer or whatever. And there was another time I was coming back from court, coming out of the wagon, and there was a bunch of protective custodies, rapos and all that probably going into the wagon, because they can't ride in the wagon with us because it'll be boom, ba, bing, bang, boom. And like I said, that Ronald West might have scared me as a little boy, hearing the spooky Unsolved Mysteries music with Robert Stack, and seeing all those composite sketches and all the reenactments and that. But I'm telling you, as a 21-year-old man, if they put him in there with me and the other guy that were in there, woof! So there you guys go. That is my story about how I crossed paths more than once with a very notorious, high-profile serial killer. I'm going to put some links in the description, including the Unsolved Mysteries link. And I think you guys believe me anyway when I tell you guys a story. Obviously, if I was lying, I would, I used to eat lunch with this guy, or I beat him up, and you know what I mean? Like, it's not colorful enough for me to be lying about it. But I figured it would break up some of the unboxings, and a few of you have told me you enjoy my old stories. So that's a very interesting one that will never unburn from my memory, or that guy's name. Ronald Glenn West, the .22 caliber killer, aka the Blind River Killer. Rest in peace to the McAllisters, because the husband has since passed away, obviously, and to Brian Major, who was murdered on the scene. Anybody wondering where Ronald Glenn West is today? He's rotting in prison. The first picture is how I remember seeing him. This is how he looks. All these years later, it doesn't look like prison life treated you so good, Mr. West. I told you, all those years ago. Every so often you hear about him getting a parole hearing, like in April of 2022, but he'll never get out. He's like Paul Bernardo. He's gonna rot. Yeah, a lot of people get scared when these monsters go for parole, and I don't blame them, but thankfully, if they're deemed dangerous offenders, I'm not sure if Mr. West is a dangerous offender, but I know that Paul Bernardo is. You got that designation, you're screwed. I know a couple people that have it from way back when. You don't get out. You get out when the shrink tells you can get out. And yeah, it's a way to lock you up, throw away the key. Long-term offender status, you got at least a chance to get out. Dangerous offender status, you're screwed. Well, there you have it, guys. I'm going to head to my house now. I just pulled over. I was cruising around just so I could let Glenn sleep. The poor guy has to get up super early, and I'm on holiday. So I'm not going to go in there and make a racket, keep the poor guy awake. Anyway, guys, I hope you liked my story about meeting a true Canadian psycho. Ronald Glenn West. Serial killer, cold case, crazy. Something like that never leaves your memory. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Just a little something to break up the unboxing videos. Please smash the like button for me. Subscribe if you haven't already. And hit the share button. And as always, guys, happy hunting.